I'm Dawn Hill, host of Heart, Mind, and Purpose, a podcast where we explore what it means to live an aligned and wholehearted life. I am a professional counselor with over 25 years of experience and a deep love for meaningful conversation. I bring you honest reflections, soulful questions, and meaningful tools for managing life. Whether you're seeking clarity, connection, or simply a space to breathe, this podcast is here for you. Tune in weekly and join me on the journey.
Welcome to Heart, Mind, and Purpose, the podcast that explores the layers of our relationships, our growth, and the words that shape both. Hi, this is Paul Gramercy, producer of today's episode, where Dawn takes on a challenge every parent faces: boundaries. What do they really mean, and how do we hold the line while still showing love? From the everyday moments when kids test limits to the deeper struggles of over-functioning or over-empathizing, Dawn unpacks why boundaries aren't barriers, they're bridges to safety, respect, and trust. Here's your host, Dawn Hill, with today's theme: Hold the Line, Love the Child.
We hear the word boundaries all the time, but what does it really mean as a parent? At its core, a boundary is simply a line that marks where you end and your child begins. It's how you define yourself and your role while giving your child space to learn who they are. Today's podcast is Boundaries in Parenting: Hold the Line and Love the Child. Of course, that sounds much easier than it feels like in real life. Kids test boundaries every single day. That's part of how they're wired. They want to see how far they can go, and sometimes, if we're honest, we as parents blur boundaries too, by jumping in to fix things too quickly, taking over when they should handle something themselves, or letting them cross lines we haven't firmly set. One of the most important jobs we have as parents is to stay both loving and steady. That means knowing our role, holding our bottom lines, and being clear about what we value. Boundaries aren't about being rigid or cold. They're about creating safety, clarity, respect for both us and our children. Here's the key. It's through everyday experiences of setting and keeping those boundaries that our kids learn to trust us, respect us, and ultimately respect the limits we have set for them. Before we get started, I'd like to say parents is a massive topic all by itself, and boundaries are huge as well. I cannot cover all of that today in one podcast. I will do my best to introduce the key concepts and the importance of understanding the need for boundaries as a parent. In relationships, boundaries do a few important things. They create safety. Kids and adults need to know what's okay and what's not okay to feel secure. They build trust. When boundaries are steady, our kids learn they can count on us to mean what we say. Matthew 5:37 says, "All you need to say is simply yes or no." This is the heart of clear communication, or you may have heard it as it's often paraphrased: let your yes be yes and your no be no. Then boundaries foster respect. Boundaries remind us that both people's needs matter, and they also allow closeness. Clear boundaries don't push people apart. Actually, they make connection possible because both people know where they stand. Think of it this way: without healthy boundaries, a parent might do everything for their child, even things the child can do on their own. The child never learns resilience, and the parent often feels drained and overwhelmed. This is called enmeshment, which happens when boundaries are so blurred that it's hard to tell where one person ends and the other begins. Instead of healthy closeness, there's an over-involvement that leaves little room for individuality. With healthy boundaries, a parent says, "I love you, and I believe you can handle this. I'll be here to guide you if you need me. I won't take over." Boundaries are like invisible lines that help us know where one person ends and another begins. They are not walls to keep people out. They are more like fences with gates. They help us stay safe and respect each other. I often think visually, and I think about boundaries like TV shows I used to see when I was a kid. While babysitting, there would be reruns from the early 1960s or whatever, and there'd be like shows like Leave It to Beaver or Dennis the Menace. And I just remember the yards in those TV shows when thinking about boundaries. And sometimes the yards would be just separated by a little row of flowers, and then as the shows went on, those flowers became hedges. And then I do remember all of a sudden white picket fences showing up that all had gates. And I remember in one show, the little boy wanted to go in the yard, and the man who lived there was standing in his yard. And he said, Dennis, you have to ask before you open the gate. So it was like he was very clear about his boundaries. And as time has gone on, those picket fences turned into, like in the late 70s and 80s and on, we all have 6-foot tall cedar fences now. So boundaries between yards in real life are very clear. So we need to use that as a visual for how we want to have boundaries with each other. Your boundary is what belongs to you, your body, your feelings, and your choices. Other people's boundaries are what belongs to them, their body, their feelings, and their choices. When boundaries are healthy, you feel safe and respected, you know what's expected of you, and you can trust no means no and yes means yes. For example, if you barge into a room without knocking, you are crossing the boundary of someone's personal space. If you tell a friend a secret and they keep it private, they are respecting your boundary. And if they tell your secret, then they are not keeping or respecting your boundary. This is a boundary breaker. A boundary breaker is someone who doesn't respect the limits you set, whether it's your time, your space, your privacy, or your values. Sometimes it's intentional, but often it's just a pattern they've fallen into. Either way, it leaves you feeling unheard or even unsafe. Boundaries don't mean that people don't care about you. They show love and respect because they say, I care about you and I care about me. Boundaries aren't about being harsh or shutting people out. They are about being steady, loving, and clear, so relationships can grow in trust, safety, and respect. Here's a few simple examples. Without healthy boundaries, it might sound like, I'll do whatever you want, even if it hurts me. This leads to resentment and or enmeshment. With healthy boundaries, they say, I care about you, but I can't do that. Here's what I can do instead. This creates balance of love and self-respect. The bottom line, boundaries mean knowing yourself, expressing your limits clearly, and respecting both your needs and the needs of others. So how do you know when your boundaries are being pushed? It often shows up in everyday moments like, for example, a 13-year-old walks into your room without knocking, ignoring your privacy. Or a 10-year-old interrupts your conversations with other adults without waiting politely. Your teen tells you how to parent younger siblings or even how to run the adult relationships. Or a young child throws a tantrum in public, knowing you're likely to give in to avoid embarrassment. And sometimes it's more subtle. You might notice yourself feeling anxious, resentful, uncomfortable, or even diminished, like the rug's been pulled out from under you. Other times you may see your child stepping into roles that aren't theirs, like offering you dating advice or acting as if they run the household. When boundaries are pushed, whether in your face or quietly, you feel it in your body. Something feels off, and that's your signal. You are feeling as disrupted as your child seems to be. Then the key is slowing down enough to notice what you're feeling and why. With that self-awareness, you're more likely to respond instead of reacting. With responding, this means pausing, naming what's happening, and holding your line calmly. Here's a few examples. I need you to knock before coming in my room. My room is my private space. Or, I'll answer your question when I'm finished talking with Mrs. Smith. Please wait. Or, I know you're upset, but yelling at me in the store won't change the answer. We'll talk when you're calm. While reacting often comes from being caught off guard or overwhelmed, it might sound like snapping, why can't you ever respect my privacy? Or shaming, you're so rude, what's wrong with you? Or giving in out of frustration, saying, fine, just stop whining and you can have it. The difference matters. When you respond, you're modeling self-control, respect, and the very boundaries you're trying to teach. When you react, you're showing your child what it looks like to lose control in the moment. And while no parent gets it right every time, aiming for a response over a reaction gives both of you a much better chance of learning, growing, and building trust together. Now here's another way boundaries blur. When we do too much for our children, maybe it's tying the shoes of a child who could do it themselves, constantly checking up on homework, or stepping in to solve every friendship struggle. At the root of this is usually our anxiety. We want them to succeed. We want to protect them, and it hurts us to watch them struggle. But here's the hard truth. When we jump in too quickly, we rob our kids of the chance to learn resilience. Disappointments, arguments with friends, and navigating school, all of these are important life lessons. Our job is to support, coach, guide, not to fight every battle for them. Now, sometimes our empathy gets the best of us. We project our feelings onto our kids, thinking something like, I'd be devastated in this situation, they must be too. So we rescue them, but when we protect them from every painful feeling, we send the message that they can't handle it. The truth is they can, and we also rob them from the chance to build resilience and other relationship skills. Healthy empathy says, I see you, I know this is hard, and I believe in you. Over-empathy says, this is too big for you, so I'll fix it. One empowers, the other limits. When we overfunction or over-empathize with our children, rescuing them too often, indulging every win, or shielding them from natural consequences, we unintentionally send the message that they can't handle life on their own. They may begin to believe that others will always step in, excuse them from responsibility, or smooth things over. Overindulgence, though it may feel like kindness in the moment, can actually cause harm. Research in child development shows that when children are consistently rescued or indulged, they miss out on learning essential skills like resilience, problem solving, and accountability. The truth is, society will not always dismiss poor behaviors or attitudes. Teachers, bosses, and peers will expect responsibility, and adults who fall into patterns of being rescued often end up in unhealthy or controlling or coercive relationships. Our role as parents is both a task and an honor to lovingly teach our children the value of limits, their own and those of others. Boundaries give them the tools to face life with confidence, strength, and respect for themselves and those around them. And here's some encouragement. This doesn't mean we never help our kids. Of course, we comfort, guide, and support them when life feels too big. The key is balancing that love with the space they need to grow so they learn little by little they are capable and strong. Now, when defining your boundaries as a parent, you first must know what you value, what matters to you, what lines are non-negotiable. If honesty is important, then live it out, model it. Kids are watching more than they're listening. What you do speaks louder than what you say. I have an example from my 25 plus years of counseling. I've had to work with many people in their 20s, 30s, and into their 40s who are struggling with their own self-image. You know, their parents told them, you're beautiful, you're handsome, whatever. But then they would watch their parents stand in the mirror and they would hear the parents say these things about themselves. I look terrible. My hair is always a mess. I can never look right. Look at how fat I am. I'm just a mess. I'm so ugly. These are the kind of things that people learned about themselves as they watched and listened to their parents rather than what their parents told them about themselves. Here are some signs you might be blurring boundaries without realizing it. It might sound like this: doing things for your child they can and should do for themselves, interrogating them constantly instead of letting them volunteer information, letting them invade your relationship as a couple and always putting them in the center, or oversharing your adult problems with them as if you were their peer. I've had this so much experientially for people whose parents went through divorce, when one or both parents would talk too much about the other parent or about their struggles now that they were divorced. This brings the child into an adult relationship. They are not our peer, and that blurs the boundary, and it's confusing for them. Then there's handing over control of the household to your child, or living vicariously through their achievements, or feeling crushed by their failures as if they were your own. We need to separate our egos from them. If we don't, we are likely feeling their resentment and disdain, and they will pull away and sometimes disconnect. And finally, falling apart emotionally whenever your child is upset. Boundaries don't distance us from our kids. They create closeness because they allow for both healthy roles of clear expectations and respect on both sides. When children know where the lines are, they feel safe. When we stay grounded in our own role, we give them the gift of watching us model what it means to be a steady, trustworthy adult. Boundaries say, I love you, I am here for you. We each know where we stand. Then throughout the teen years, these three relational shifts will unfold at one time. With family, teens need space but crave connection with the family. With friends, belonging and accepting take center stage, and with themselves, identity and self-esteem are being shaped in profound ways. And beneath all of that, the nervous system is always scanning, asking, am I safe? Do I belong? Am I valued? So from ages 4 to 18, children are navigating a journey of connection, identity, and growth. When we remember the foundations of attachment and the nervous system's need for safety, we see these as stages, not battles to survive, but opportunities to deepen trust. Whether you are clapping for a 5-year-old's drawing, listening to an 8-year-old's worries, or walking with a teenager through their first heartbreak, your presence matters more than perfect words. Parenting isn't always about getting it all right. It's about being a steady, safe presence. Because when a child knows, I am safe, I am seen, I am loved, that's when they flourish into the confident, resilient, compassionate adults we hope they will become. Until next time, may you be kind to your heart, clear in your mind, and grounded in your purpose. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Heart, Mind, and Purpose with Dawn Hill. If today's conversation helps you see parenting boundaries in a new light, share it with another parent who might need encouragement along the way. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss future episodes where Dawn explores how our hearts, minds, and relationships grow through challenge and grace. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, connect with Dawn at dawnmariehill.com under the Heart, Mind, and Purpose tab. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.